Before we start this long bicycle ride, we have invited Marianne Weinreich to give a more to zoom out and give a more general perspective on the current international situation on bicycling. So Marianne, can you hear us? We cannot hear you.
I'm unmuted.
Okay, there you are.
Good.
So, yes, and welcome, Marianne.
Thank you. I'll share my screen. See it?
Yes.
Good. I am trying to get it in presenters mode. Good. Thank you very much for inviting me today for this webinar about cycling. And as you said, I won't be talking about long distance cycling, but cycling in general. I am market manager in the Smart Mobility division in Rambøll, and I'm also chair of the Cycling Embassy of Denmark. Just briefly, Rambøll is an international but Danish founded engineering and design company. We are over 16,000 experts in 300 offices in 35 countries. So we have a representation all around the world. I just have to say that unlike many of my colleagues, I'm not an engineer or a traffic planner. I have a background in Scandinavian literature and world history, but have for the last 20 years been working with sustainable mobility policy and promotion. And I've been working a lot with cycling over the last 20 years. Rambøll Smart Mobility is a division that covers 7 of our geographies. It's the Scandinavian countries, and then Germany, India, and Singapore. And we are about 300 people working with smart mobility and walking and cycling and public transport and so forth. As I said, I am chair of the Cycling Embassy of Denmark. It's an organization of Danish cycling cities, private companies like Rambøll, and NGOs like the Danish Cyclist Federation. And we joined forces 11 years ago to promote the Danish cycling know-how and share knowledge and know-how about how to promote cycling. So please visit our website. We have this cycling solutions site where we have articles about cycling in Denmark. But I will now talk about the international perspective, because COVID-19 has turned out to be a window of opportunity for cycling. All around the world, from Berlin to Bogota, cities have just had a cycling boom that we've never seen before. And of course, one of the drivers for that has been that COVID has meant limited space in public transportation for people, because we need more distancing. And in order to cater for these people and make sure that they, instead of when they couldn't use public transportation, just bought a car or started using their car, cities have provided cycling infrastructure and different other elements around the world. We have seen pop-up bike lanes, car-free streets, and traffic calming around the world. Governments have and cities have created subsidies to buy and repair bicycles and get cycling training. And in many, many cities, we actually see that bikes have been sold out for quite a while now, and there's a long waiting list also to get your bike repaired. So it's actually turned out to be a window of opportunity. But how do we make sure that all this good for cycling will actually stay as the pandemic hopefully goes away? Here are just some numbers. We've seen investments in cycling, and right now Finland is leading with 7.76 euros per capita. But as you see here, the numbers for for the bike boom when it comes to sold bicycles. Here are numbers from the States, are really, really high. So we have a cycling revolution going on right now. And all the different measures and the different investments that are going on in cities, especially in Europe, is being tracked by the European Cyclist Federation. On their website, they have this dashboard that collects numbers and measures. And as you see, we have now surpassed 1 billion euros that has been invested right now in cycling measures and infrastructure since the breakout of COVID-19. So that is significant and never before seen money. And this even doesn't include what's going on in Ireland right now, because in Ireland, the government decided to have a funding scheme for cycling and walking for 1 million euros per day for the next 5 years. But since this is not based in COVID-19, this is not part of these numbers. So that actually comes on top of that. So it's very exciting what's going on also in Ireland right now. But as I said, we need to figure out how, how we can make sure that this is not temporary solutions, but it's actually going to stay also when the pandemic is not here. And I want to say a few words about how to normalize cycling, how to make cycling safe from start to finish. You need to look at the bike as a means of transportation, first and foremost. It is also a toy for kids. It is also something, a sport equipment. It is also something for leisure. But if you want people cycling for transportation, you got to look at it as a means of transportation. So you need to have bikes available that are good for transportation, and people need to be able to ride them, both balance them and also know the rules of the street and make sure that they can bike safely. So different bikes available for different people at different needs, and bicycle training is a core element. Then one of the most important things is to have political will and to have a plan. Because you can have a plan, but if there's no political will and there's no budget, it is still just a plan. But you need a plan, a long-term plan on how to, the different steps of designing and creating and redistributing space in your city. And you need also a plan which element to do when, because it's impossible to do everything at one time. But having a plan is a core element. And in that plan, having a protected network of a cycling infrastructure is a backbone of a cycling city. You need to have a network that makes sure that it's safe to ride everywhere, that you can go everywhere and it's direct and convenient, and that the network is coherent. In Denmark, we have a design principle where we have a sidewalk and then a curb, and then the bike lanes and then a curb. And if there are parked cars, they are then protecting the cyclists from the moving cars. And it doesn't have to be curb protected network. There are many other ways to create protected bike networks. But the idea is that there is a physical separation between the moving cars and the cyclists, and also in many cases with the pedestrians, because difference in speed causes conflict usually. Every bicycle ride ends with a parked bicycle, and that's why it's important to make sure that there's bicycle parking available everywhere people want to go and go with their bicycle. And especially it is a very good idea to link up with bicycle parking bicycling and public transport. Some people think that public transport and the bicycle is competing, but it's actually not the case. It's a match made in heaven with the bike and public transportation, because with that link, you can add distance to your trips, and you can live an car independent lifestyle with these two modes at your service. It is, for many years, we have used ITS to make it a smooth ride and give a lot of information and service to car drivers. In the last years, that has also been applied to cycling in many countries, and looking at how to optimize the flow for a cyclist. Because as a cyclist, it's very annoying to having to stop for a red light, because you have to use your own physical energy to get moving again. So making sure that you can have green waves and avoid stopping, or just having information about if there is, for instance, in Copenhagen, the congestion on bike lanes in rush hours, which routes would be better to choose. Or like in the city of Odense, where they took the idea from a Dutch city to put in rain sensors in some of the intersections, and make sure that cyclists would have more green time when it rains. Because one thing is that it's annoying stopping for red, but even more annoying stopping for red and in the rain as a cyclist. And of course, they then promote that service in that intersection. Otherwise, the cyclist wouldn't know that that service was available to them. Again, catering for cyclists and making cyclists feel welcome and at home in cities is an important element. Just like we do when we invite people to our home and make them feel welcome, we should cater for cyclists in the city. Here are some examples from Denmark with public air tire pumps, a tilted garbage can that makes it easier for cyclists to hit the garbage can with the garbage, because we have a tendency in Denmark to eat while we're cycling. And in left corner, we have the so-called footrest that makes it easier and nicer in intersections to rest your foot and maybe not anymore your hand on the railing. But also things like the cyclist counter that you see in the right below corner. The cyclist counters serve two purposes. They count cyclists every day, every hour, all the time, and provide cities with data about cyclists, but it at the same time also show cyclists that they count. And as a cyclist, if it's a cold, rainy, Danish November morning, you can see that you are not alone. You're part of something bigger, and you're not the only one who chose to bike that particular day. And even though cycling infrastructure is less expensive than, for instance, car or public transport infrastructure, we should not build cheap solutions, because it also gives a signal of whether or not this is a prioritized mode. So for instance, in Copenhagen, when linking up the city and creating bridges to cross a lot of the water, and those bridges make it easier for cyclists and faster to get around the city, they chose very beautiful solutions. So they just didn't create infrastructure, they created landmarks. And now people are coming from all around the world to ride on the orange bicycle snake, for instance. And I encourage you all to try it if you haven't done it. Riding across the water in between the buildings is just an amazing feeling. I have a smile on my face every time I do it. And then to build the cycling culture, you need to start young. And even though, you know, we in Denmark have a cycling culture that people bike, we start as early as kindergartens, where many cities have schemes where the kids play with those small so-called running bikes or balance bikes without pedals, simply just to have fun with the bike and become that the bike becomes part of their daily lives, and they get the motor skills so that they can just at 2 years, 3 years of being on these balance bikes, they just get on their little bike to cycle when they're around 4 or 5 years old. Include companies, businesses, shopping centers, schools, all the destinations, to make sure that they have the facilities that is needed as a cyclist. Bicycle parking, or it can be showers, or everything that people would want to have. And then make sure that cycling is part of your life, all your life, because everybody has a right to wind in their hair, as Cycling Without Age says, and create services and measures that makes it possible also for elderly people to ride bikes. Monitor and evaluate, track how you're doing, and include people in surveys of satisfaction to make sure that what you're doing is actually also going in the right direction and is according to your plan and your goals. And include women, because women are more averse to risk than men, and women will not bike if it's not safe. So women are an indicator species for how bike-friendly a city is. You can just count how many women are cycling, and you get a feeling of how safe it is. In Denmark and the Netherlands, we have 50-50% women and men cycling, and that's not the case in many other places. That then it's a male activity. So as John Putcher, professor at Rutgers University, says, ask women what they want and give it to them if you want a cycling culture. So if
you have 1 minute left.
Yes, and I'm also just about to wrap up.
Thank you.
Because if you have all these elements and you have this holistic approach to cycling, then you can hopefully have a city and a society where the 9-month pregnant woman will go on a bike, where the father with the kids will accompany them to kindergarten or school on bike, where the businessman chooses the bike to go to work, and where you can have your last ride on a bicycle as well. And that is what I would call a city that I would want to live in, a livable city. So that was the words from me, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Marianne. What I forgot to say before the presentation was that if you have any questions during the presentation, please use the Slido on your computer or on your iPhone, because if you ask questions here in the room, people online will not be able to hear you. So I think we will, because people did not have the time to ask questions, maybe I have just one brief question for you, Marianne, before we continue. So I like what you said about each person or individual should find the bicycle that fits each individual. And where do you, in your perspective, where do you see e-bikes in this? Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, definitely. I think e-bikes is part of this new cycling revolution, because it makes it possible to bike in hilly cities. Everybody thinks Denmark is completely flat. It's not. I'm also based in Aarhus, and I live on top of a hill. And so it makes cycling available to people in hilly cities, for people who want to ride or have to ride longer distances, for instance, for commuting. And also if people feel that they are not fit enough to ride. I've interviewed a lot of people who started with the e-bike, and then after a couple of months figured out now they actually feel fit enough to ride a regular bicycle, and then they started doing that. So I think the e-bike is a fantastic option for people to start cycling and having the bike as part of their everyday lives, as an alternative to a private car.
Great. Thanks a lot, Marianne. So let's give her a hand, and let's continue to the next presenter.